Chapter 10. After sitting next to each other, isolated by the shock of their relationship ending, Brett and May stood from the old swings and wrapped their arms around each other. It was the end of the most beautiful thing either of them had ever experienced, but it was inevitable. Brett remembered the conversation he'd had with his mom after the first date with May. He had told her that he was going to marry May and that the two would spend the rest of their lives together. In his mind, he had pictured a never-ending loop of days spent talking and laughing as they roamed around St. Farr. There was a hazy picture of them resting together on a weathered porch of an aged white house in Old Town, sitting in silence, watching cars and children pass every so often. He'd pictured a life with few details, the only clear parts of the future being May standing by his side. Now that future was shattered. He understood that it had to be done. May was always destined for more than wasting her time with a guy like him. She was smart, gifted, lovely, and so much bigger than St. Farr. It turned out Mom was right. May gripped Brett tightly, sobbing into his shoulder, trying to find comfort from the man who she'd just pushed away. She didn't want to do it. It broke her heart to leave the guy who'd been so kind, welcoming, and loving. She thought back through the last year, recalling how Brett had given up relationships with his friends and peers and spent all his time with her. How he had stood up for her at school and around the community when kids would harass or give her dirty looks. How he had spent so many nights talking to her on the phone, ensuring she had a chance to clear her mind and say every unsettled thought from her overactive mind. He was everything, but a future with Brett and St. Farr was too small for her life, or for her to say. Life moves on, and she needed to do the same. After what felt like an eternity, but an all too short at the same time, the two teens slowly released their grip and walked together, hands in their pockets, to Brett's house. They silently entered his mom's blue minivan and made the drive to the outskirts. KOBO played Semi-Charmed Life as they drove. May reached out and turned down the volume even further. She looked out the window, not daring to turn to Brett, knowing if she did, she would start crying all over again. Brett dropped May off at her home for the last time. No hug, no kiss, only a half-hearted wave and a look of disappointment. May headed to Austin the next day, leaving Brett all alone in St. Farr. Brett tried to occupy himself and fill his mind with thoughts far from May, but it was nearly impossible. For the last year, the couple had used the entire town of St. Farr as the setting for their legendary love story. Everything reminded him of May. Harvey's, where they shared shakes, the town square, where they had walked laps endlessly, sharing every idea either one of them had with the other. Even his home reminded him of the nights when they'd stayed up till 1 a.m. playing cards and trying to laugh quietly so they wouldn't wake up Brett's parents or siblings. The only way to escape the memory of May was to escape his own town. He began to flounder, grasping for anything that could get him out of St. Farr. He considered becoming a truck driver, but he already had a hard time even making the drive to Austin without getting bored, so that was out. He thought about just moving to the mountains in Colorado or Utah, but the few skills he had learned at summer camp were not enough to prepare him to live off the land. He had missed all the deadlines for college, so he wasn't able to attend a university. Not that they would take him anyway. He'd spent his entire senior year cultivating a future with May. That hadn't left much time for him to study or work on school projects. May was able to manage, but she was way more gifted in academics than he was. While looking online for a solution, he found an open enrollment community college about an hour away. He applied and made the short move to a new town. College was even more difficult than he had imagined, and he already knew he was going to struggle. He wasn't able to make friends, he wasn't able to keep up with the homework, he wasn't even able to will himself out of bed to make it to class. After failing most of the classes in his first semester, Brett dropped out and moved back home. Now he sat in St. Farr, not only rejected by the love of his life, but also as a guy who couldn't even cut it in community college. While taking his first walk downtown since becoming a dropout, Brett noticed there had been a small change in the town square. One of the old vacant shops now had a clean new white sign with red letters reading Wellsco. He approached the shop and peered through the large window that ran the width of the storefront. It was a grocery store. That's interesting, he thought. St. Farr had never had a grocery store within the community. People would either buy the necessities at the gas station on the edge of town, or they would drive 20 minutes to another community's grocery store to stock up their pantries. It was a nice idea, a good change in the small town. Better yet, it was the one place in St. Farr where he and May didn't have any history. He took a deep breath, patted down his hair, put on a smile, and walked into the store. 30 minutes later, Brett left Wellsco with what would be his first and most important job that he would ever have.